Today we'll be looking at how a strange creature was discovered and how it gripped the local community in the Ural Mountains in Russia. This strange story would eventually bring the attention of the international media, intelligence services, and allegedly those not from this world. In May of 1996, a retired elderly woman named Tamara Pomozhdina, this is going to be a fun episode for pronunciations, discovered a baby lying in the snow alone in the woods near the village of, Kaolinovy, near the city of Kaolinovy. You're all just going to have to grin and bear my pronunciations this episode. Initially, Tamara thought the baby to be an animal, but until she heard sounds that turned out to be those of a crying baby, without hesitating, she wrapped the baby up and took him home to her apartment, determined to raise the child herself, naming him Alyoshenka. At some point in the days following this, Tamara's daughter-in-law, also named Tamara, visited the apartment, where Tamara Sr. showed her a new baby. Tamara Jr. would then go on to describe the strange encounter. I used to visit my mother-in-law twice a week. She was living on her own. On that day I bought her food stuff, just like I had done before. I was about to leave when she told me we better give some food to the baby too. Then she showed me to the bed. I took a look closer at it and saw him. He was on top of the bed squeaking some funny sounds. I can see his mouth shaped like a small pipe. His tiny scarlet tongue was moving. I also spotted 2 teeth inside. In a way, he looked like a little baby. His head was brown, his body looked grey. I didn't see any eyelids. He didn't have any genitalia either. And the pupils of his eyes were widening and narrowing, just like that of a cat's eyes, doing it when you turn on the light and turn it off again several times in a row. The fingers on his hands and feet were pretty long. I only bothered to ask my mother-in-law where on earth she got the monster from. She told me she'd found him in the forest. She kept calling him Alyoshenka. She gave him a candy and he started sucking on it. I thought it was some kind of animal. Tamara Jr. would also later state that Alyoshenka was much smaller than you would expect even a newborn baby to be, and that she didn't believe that the baby was from this planet. In the weeks that followed, Tamara Sr.'s neighbours began noticing her irregular behaviour. She would happily tell them about her new baby, but become vague when asked about her child, not showing the baby to any of them. Her claims of having a baby were heavily doubted by the community, believing that she had finally lost her mind, as she was well known for visiting the local cemetery to steal flowers from graves, decorate her house. This behaviour led many to believe she was suffering from a mental illness. Tamara Sr. would eventually begin to feel ill and was rushed to hospital despite her cries that she had a baby to take care of. As no one believed her claims about her child, no one bothered to check on the baby, and with Tamara Jr. out of town, this left little Alyoshenka all by himself. Now, from this point forward, it's hard to find exactly what happened, with many people in the village giving conflicting information, which, as we will cover later, it is hard to trust. But what is clear is somehow a police detective named Vladimir Bendlin would end up with Alyoshenka's remains. There are different explanations and stories as to how exactly Bendlin, but from what I can gather, it seems once Tamara Jr. returned to the village, she brought her friend Nurdivon, and together they went to Tamara Sr.'s apartment to check on Alyoshenka, discovering that he had passed away with no one to care for him. Nurdivon took Alyoshenka's remains with him and then would later pass them off to Vladimir Bendlin, the police detective, in hopes of finding any relatives and to ascertain if all of this was a hoax. Lynn sent Alyoshenka's remains to Dr. Ivan Yermolchilev for analysis. She concluded that the remains were genuine and that the body was once living tissue. She believed that Alyoshenka was a premature child who was deformed due to the nearby Kyshtym Dwarf disaster in 1957, where an underground tank of high-level liquid nuclear waste exploded, contaminating the surrounding land. Even before this disaster, radioactive material was being dumped into local rivers where the villagers got their water from. However, Lynn's clinical assistant, Labon Rovamov, who has seen many deformities in children before, disagreed. She would state that there were too many differences, with the most glaring being that Alyoshenka's head was made of 4 different bones, with each having sharp edges completely different from that of a human being's skull. Even if Alyoshenka was born with these deformities, experts believe that he would either have been born stillborn or would have passed away within a few hours. So, how is it possible that if he was alive for weeks and able to eat, if he was born with all these deformities? By this point, the small village of Kaolinovy was filled to the brim with tales of how a mad woman, Tamala, discovered an alien child. The story was picked up by the local media and from there the international media. Soon the village was swamped by the international press. Desperate for any sensational information, they were throwing money at anyone who would talk to them. Some locals saw this as a chance to earn quick money in the struggling post-Soviet economy of Russia.
Julian.
Making it very hard till 28 years later to piece together exactly what occurred due to all the different stories. Some were suggesting that Tamala and Nizhgorodov had made up the whole story to make money, even though testing showed that Alyoshenka's remains were indeed organic. But the question remains, if Alyoshenka was alive for some time, was he human, and is it truly possible that he was a victim of the Kyshtym Dwarf disaster? The only way to be sure was if DNA testing was carried out. The strange stories emerging from the village not only drew the attention of the press, but also many UFO experts, with one of these being a man called Boris Zonsotov, who offered to carry out a DNA test at the UFO Research Academy. Lynn handed over Alyoshenka to one of Zonsotov's assistants, a decision that he would regret. Lynn eagerly awaited the result. After weeks turned to months, he received nothing. The testing was only supposed to take a few weeks. When Zonsontov would eventually reappear in the interview, he gave a very bizarre explanation to what had happened. According to Zonsontov, when his assistants were driving back to the lab with Alyoshenka's body, he claims a UFO came down in the middle of the road, blocking their path, where aliens took Alyoshenka's body with them, saying they took him back. Since his interview, he has refused to comment about the event further. This bizarre explanation itself has spawned its own theories that this was simply a cover story to obscure the potential involvement of intelligence services, because there are eyewitnesses who claim Zonsontov was visited by investigators from an unknown organisation that forced him and his colleagues to sign confidentiality papers. Another theory suggests that Zonsontov had sold Alyoshenka's body to a private buyer for a large sum. However, none of these stories can be confirmed. Whatever occurred though, Alyoshenka has not been seen since. With the loss of Alyoshenka, the hopes of a DNA test evaporated. That was until 1997, where a woman approached Lynn, claiming to have the blanket that Tamala had used to wrap Alyoshenka in. She offered to give the blanket over to Lynn for DNA analysis on the condition that he take it seriously and investigate properly. Tamala Jr. would confirm that this was the blanket that had been used, and with her consent, Berlin took the blanket to be tested at the Valrovon Institute of General Genetics in Moscow. During the long time of waiting for the DNA analysis results, in 1991, Tamara Sr. would somehow escape from the institution where she was being held, only to be killed by a speeding car, which some have argued was a deliberate hit and run, especially given that she was due to undergo hypnotists to recall her experience, and that usually the road she was on was very quiet, and her car came speeding out of nowhere and knocked her down. But after years of testing, in 2004, an official statement was released about the analysis of the DNA on the blanket. During the analysis, they discovered blood spots, which when tested revealed Alyoshenka was most likely a premature female with many deviations. With this, we finally have the answers to Alyoshenka's likely origins. Adding to this, in 2008, the Enigma skeleton, which is very similar to Alyoshenka, was tested, with the results being the same as a premature baby with rare deformities, meaning that premature babies can deform in this way in extremely rare cases, suggesting that although Alyoshenka may not look very human, he, or I guess she, was entirely human. Although Alyoshenka's time was brief, at least she got to experience true care and love from a woman who took her in as her own.